Good afternoon, everyone. I am today going to demonstrate how to make some roti parcels with leftover chicken and broccoli, onions and tomatoes and a few spices. So I've got my flours here, so 2 cups, and to that I'm going to add about 1 heaped teaspoon of cornflour, and that just goes in. But I'm also going to add, I've got 1 heaped teaspoon of sea salt, and it's a sort of medium coarse sea salt, and I've got 1 teaspoon of caster sugar, and that also goes in. So this recipe has got no yeast, it is a flatbread. And they're my ingredients. To that I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of oil. Just going to glug that in. It's about 2 tablespoons of oil, and then in the cup here I've got warm water. I'm going to use the warm water and bring this dough together, and this is essentially very similar to the roti mix that I make, with the exception of I've added sugar to this. And then what I'm also going to add is, just to give it a bit of flavour to my parcels and also a bit of colour, I've got 2 stemmed broccoli here, and I've divided it up, so I've got the coarse florets on one side, and they're going to go into my flour. Ideally I'd use methi leaves, fenugreek leaves, but they're quite hard to get fresh, and this kind of gives you the same effect in terms of appearance. So that's going to come together, and it is going to get messy, so that's not a problem. We pop that into the bowl, pour a drizzle of oil over that, and I'm just using a good 100% vegetable oil. Just make sure it doesn't then stick. So as you can see, you've got some lovely green in there, in with your chapatti flour. So if you cover that, I've got a lid ready and waiting. If you cover that up and let that sit in the side for at least 45 minutes, that's done. I'm just going to go wash my hands because they're a bit greasy and a bit oily. And I'm going to come back, I'm going to cook up the chicken that's going to be used in the stuffing. So my oil's heating up on a medium burner. To that I'm going to add, if you've got fresh chillies, fresh red chillies, add 2 to 3 of those. Keep the seeds in if you like. I'm using quite a hot red chilli flakes, so I've got 1.5 teaspoons of red chilli flakes. I've got 1/2 teaspoon of star anise powder and 1 heaped teaspoon of cinnamon powder. We're using powders for this rather than whole spices because we want the flavours to infuse into our chicken. So I've added the spices in. To that I'm adding 4 large finely diced cloves of garlic, and then 1 thumb-sized piece of ginger that's also finely diced. So that's gone in. Just grab a utensil for stirring. That's cooking off with the ginger and garlic. I'm also going to add, at this time, the onions. So the onions are infused with those flavours. So that's one large finely chopped brown onion, and I've got 4 heaped teaspoons of coriander, cumin powder that I'm going to also add to the mix. Once that oil has absorbed and it's just frying off the bottom, if you add in your tomatoes at this point, that will add the juice, will help cook down your onions. So I sort of 2 salad tomatoes worth of tomatoes, or I've used 6 to 7 sort of cherry tomatoes that are finely chopped. And because your chicken's already cooked, you can keep the veg nice and crunchy. You don't have to overcook it too much because it's going to get refried shortly. We just want to make sure that all the flavours are infused. Now on your broccoli stalks that you use the tops for your flour, your dough mix, you can use the stalks in with your chicken filling. And that just adds a brilliant vibrant colour. And you want to keep the veg crunchy, so don't add any water, don't add any extra oil. And as you can tell, it's not really sticking to the bottom. Turn that heat down, so it's more on a low medium heat. So it's just shredded chicken. It's just so much easier with leftovers. And then that just goes in as well to heat through, and just make sure that chicken's infused with all that flavour. So to that, I'm just going to pour it out so that I don't over salt this. About a teaspoon of salt to the chicken. Good mix. Insta help. And some fresh ground black pepper. And then just finally bring that all together. And you want to take that off the heat. Ready to go. So I've got a nice bowl. I'm just going to pop in my chicken to cool down. It also gives you an idea of what it looks like when it's cooked. But that's what your chicken spiced up with a bit of veg will look like, and that's going to be your stuffing for your roti. While the dough was rising and the chicken was cooling, once it's cold, the flavours have established a bit more. Give it a taste. I've added probably a good squeeze of lemon to that, and a bit of extra salt, a good pinch. And I'm just going to give it a quick mix. So while I start, I'm going to just put my oil on. So in here I've got a shallow fry pan. I'm going to put the heat onto medium high and let that heat up while I make my first one. So in my bowl, that dough, as you can tell, is nice and stretchy now compared to what it was. That's well rested. So I'm going to break off about a handful. And you take a little bit of your filling. Stick you back in. Just go all the way around. What I'm going to do is fold this back in and do that once more. Just to flatten those out. We're not using egg or any other sealant in this recipe, so just need to make sure that they're stuck properly. Now that one, I'm just going to break it open so you can see what that's like inside. You've got a nicely cooked through, nice filling. Just going to have a little taste actually. But it's a bit too hot, so pop that down. That one's cooking. Just going to keep going with these. I'd love your feedback if you make these. Do let me know how they turn out, whether it's a picture or comments. Just turn this one over. So, there you go, there's the last one. I'm going to turn that oil off and let it cool down. I'll bring this over here.